let's move on to question number 5. How to ensure high standards of quality without doing everything myself. One of the biggest fears I get from clients is like, what if they mess it up? What if I have to clean it up? What if they upset a client? What do we do about that? And this is my answer to that question. And really, it's not just about high standards of quality. It's about high standards of quality, high consistency, and high team skill. Team skill is the skill of everyone on your team, not just you. So if it's you plus a web developer, you've got all your skills plus that developer's skills. We want to maximize the skills across the whole team. What we want to minimize is risk, meaning things going wrong, the likelihood and severity of things going wrong. We want to minimize your time spent. We want to minimize complexity, and we want to minimize expenses. So when I say, how do we maintain high standards of quality without doing everything yourself? What I'm really saying is, how do we do all these things? How do we maximize quality, consistency, and team skill whilst minimizing risk, time, complexity, and expenses? I want to start with a bit of a mindset piece. You want to take relatively small risks with relatively high returns. The reality is, in business, there are risks. They can't be avoided entirely. A business without risk is probably a dead business or a very, very small contained business. As the business grows, as you take on new clients, as you make things easier for yourself, there's going to be some degree of risk. And so it's about getting clarity. We understand as we grow, there's going to be risk. And so what is my appetite for growth and what is my appetite for risk? And you want to find that sweet spot. You don't want to be taking no risks because then you can't grow. But you don't want to be taking so many risks that you get overwhelmed. So we want to find that margin of growth where it's like, oh, this is an edge. Yeah, this is a risk. I don't know how this is going to go, but it's not overwhelming me. I feel ready. I feel ready to take this risk. And once you take that risk, on the other side of that risk, once you've learned what there is to know about that risk just gets smaller and smaller because you become more competent about growing your business. So you want to find that sweet spot where you're really going to grow. And you want to find, as I said, small risks with high returns. For example, hiring an administrator to do your, let's say, bookkeeping, right? Bookkeeping follows a repeatable formula. You can communicate that formula, they can do it. The likelihood of risk is low. If they make a mistake, your accountant will probably spot it and then fix it up. So how long does bookkeeping take? Maybe it takes half an hour every 2 weeks. So that's 25 hours in a year. By outsourcing that, you can reclaim 25 hours and the risk can probably be cleaned up in under an hour. So that's a small risk with a relatively high return. So that's the kind of thing that you want to hire for. The last mindset I want to share, and this is really, now I'm going to get into practical stuff after this, is that you want to choose the right level of management for each team member. Management is how much oversight, how much action are you doing with your staff member? How much reporting are you getting? How much checking in are you doing? How much instructions are you giving? That kind of thing. It's really about thinking about what is the least amount of management that I can do to get the most out of this team member. And people usually sit on one side of the spectrum. They're just delegating and disappearing, no management, or they're micromanaging and hand-holding and maybe even suffocating and exhausting themselves in the process. And there's this whole big, beautiful spectrum. And when you choose the right amount of management for that person and you gradually train them so they need less and less and less management, you get more quality, more consistency, and more team skill whilst having less risk and less time spent from you. Now, I'm going to talk about the levers of management. When I say management, this is what I actually mean. I mean task size, going from do this one tiny thing to do this whole project. I'm talking about detail of instructions from a single voice note to a 20-page standard operating procedure. Meeting frequency, like meeting once every day versus only meeting when you need to and maybe never. Reporting outside of meetings. Are they reporting every single time they do something, or are they just reporting when there's an emergency, if ever? And those are the things that you want to think about when you choose how much management to do for a staff member. The way that I decide is I ask myself, is this staff member a beginner, a competent staff member, or a mature staff member? A beginner has very low skill. We give them very small tasks. We give very detailed instructions. We meet with them very frequently, maybe every day or maybe once a week. And we get them to report like at least weekly, maybe every time they do a task. Now we move on to competent staff. Competent staff have a few years experience. They know what they're doing. They're trustworthy. We can give them batches of tasks. We can give simple instructions because we know that they already know what they're doing. We can meet with them maybe only once a month or never even, if we don't want to. And they can report, maybe they give a monthly summary or a weekly summary of everything that's happened. Then we contrast that to mature staff. Mature staff who you trust that are mature because they've proven their maturity. You can give them entire projects, and you can just say, hey, I want you to build this website. What do you need to know? And they'll ask you a few basic questions, and then they'll build the website, and it's pretty close. The detail of instruction can be low because they already have heaps of knowledge. You will maybe never need to meet with them, and their reporting can be absolutely minimal. They can just reach out only when they need something from you. Now, when I hire, I typically avoid hiring beginners because there's plenty of competent staff at very reasonable prices offshore. And if it's not something that can be done offshore, I'll find a competent staff member in Australia because I find this is the sweet spot between price and skill. You're not going to be overspending on the staff, but you're also not going to need to overinvest time and energy. So you want to be looking for competent staff, or if you have significant cash flow, looking for mature staff where you can really reduce your amount of management, meaning not doing everything yourself, but you're still getting high standards of quality. Cool. That's my cheat sheet for getting the most out of your staff with the least amount of management. Now, I am going to speak to a few other pieces. I'm not going to go into detail about this because the lecture could last forever if I did that. I'm going to talk about what I find are the most powerful tools for getting even more out of your staff, even more quality and consistency, whilst doing even less active management. The first is standard operating procedures. They are step-by-step sequences for doing repeatable things. For example, it might be every day in the morning, I want you to, like for a personal assistant, I want you to check my emails, delete the spam, unsubscribe from the spam, put all the urgent stuff in a folder, go to my Instagram, respond to my customer inquiries using the FAQs that I've given you. And if a customer needs a return, I authorize returns under this amount of money if they do it for these valid reasons. So I've given them a whole list of things to do, and I've refined that so I don't have to check in with them every day. I don't have to tell them what needs to be done every day, and they become very independent and they achieve a lot without me having to think about it. That's the magic of standard operating procedures. The next one is task management boards. Sometimes, some people love task management boards, some people hate them. You don't have to use them. But if your tasks are getting too complicated, if you're holding too many threads at once, having a task management board like Trello or Asana is very, very helpful. Third one, getting out of the way. Whenever you notice that your staff member is having to ask you the same question again and again, just try and think about the generalization that you can give them so that they no longer need to ask you those questions anymore and they can just keep working without bothering you. For example, let's say they're saying, this person wants to extend their payment plan. And you're looking at the person and their details and their situation, and you're making a judgment call. Can you just make a generalization? Can you say, if they are an enthusiastic and supportive client, if they have a legitimate reason, these are legitimate reasons, then you can offer them this extended payment plan. And if they accept it, great. And if not, then come back to me. Suddenly you've saved that person needing to ask you that question again. So that's an example of how you can get out of the way. Another example of how to get out of the way is that you connect people. So if your VA is doing customer support, but then you're needing to communicate the messages to your clients, can you pair your VA with the customer on certain topics, like maybe just on payments and bookings, so that they can communicate with the customer directly and you don't have to think about that stuff? That frees up even more of your time. Okay, number 4, containing dialogue into regular meetings. I've already spoken about that, so I won't go into detail. And number 5, design it how you want it. I find that clients have expectations that they need to treat their staff like they treat their friends. It's really important to be compassionate and respectful, but your staff's job is to make your life easier, and you can ask for it exactly how you want it. You can hire someone who knows how you want it and is enthusiastic about doing it. If you've got a staff member and they're not really keen on doing it how you want it, they're probably not a fit. So we can really shape our roles around your thinking style, your communication style, and your needs. This is a really important thing that I do in the process. I find out what your needs are before we hire. And then when we hire, we make sure we find someone who really suits your needs. So know that you'll as you grow more experience in management, you'll weed out your people-pleasing tendencies and get clearer and more precise about what you need from your staff. Okay, great. Those are the superpowers that are really going to help you get the most out of your team.